Hey there yarn artists, I'm Chanel, your crochet companion at Crochet Republic, and today we will make the muzzle for Peter the Panda. You will need chunky yarn in white, a 3.5mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors, a stitch marker, a row counter, polyester stuffing, and a tapestry needle. For round 1 we are going to start with the white yarn and we are going to put a slip knot on our hook. Thereafter we'll be chaining 5 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. In the second chain from the hook we're going to make an increase by making 2 double crochets in the same stitch. That's 1 and 2. In the next stitch we're going to make a double crochet. In the next stitch another double crochet. In the last stitch we're going to make 4 double crochets in the same stitch, and that will help us to turn our chain around. See, that's number 2. What used to be the bottom of the chain, that's number 3, is becoming the top of the chain. That's number 4. Now working into stitches we've worked in before. Next stitch gets a double crochet, next stitch also gets a double crochet, and the last stitch, which is also the first stitch you worked into, gets 2 double crochets to make an increase. You're then going to put a stitch marker into your last stitch, and that brings us to the end of round 1. For round 2 we're going to start by making an increase in stitch 1, that's 2 double crochets in the same stitch. That first stitch can be a bit tricky to get into, just be patient with it. It's 1 and 2. In the next stitch you'll make another increase. It's 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets. In the next stitch make a double crochet, in the next stitch make a double crochet. In the next 4 stitches you'll make an increase in each stitch. This is increase 1, and move to the next stitch, put in 2 double crochets, which creates increase 2, move to the next stitch, put in 2 double crochets, which makes increase 3, move to the next stitch, 2 double crochets gives us increase 4. In the next stitch you're going to make 1 double crochet, in the next stitch 1 double crochet, in the next stitch an increase, 2 double crochets in the same stitch, remove the stitch marker, make a final increase in this last stitch, then replace the stitch marker into the very last stitch, and that will bring us to the end of round 2. For round 3 we're going to make 20 double crochet, 1 in each stitch. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, remove a stitch marker and make stitch 20 in that final position. Then you'll replace the stitch marker in this last stitch, and that will bring us to the end of round 3. For round 4 you will be making 20 double crochet, 1 in each stitch. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Remove a stitch marker, make the final stitch in that position, and then replace your stitch marker in stitch 20, and that brings us to the end of round 4. For round 5, you'll be making 20 double crochet, 1 in each stitch. That's number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Remove the stitch marker, make your final stitch in that position, and then replace the stitch marker in the last stitch. For round 6, we're going to start by making a double crochet in the first stitch, and then we're going to finish off with a single crochet in the second stitch. You want to leave a nice long yarn tail that's enough for sewing the muzzle to the head. Just snip it off and then pull that tail straight through your single crochet. Pull it tight. Next you're going to insert your hook back to front in the next stitch. Hook your yarn tail and pull it through to the back. This just gives you a neater finish for when you are sewing the muzzle onto the head. You can see we've got a nice little bowl now that is ready to be attached. Our next task is to pin our muzzle into place. We'll need the muzzle we've just crocheted. You're going to need stuffing to put in it. You're just going to stuff it lightly, not too stiff at first. I just use my thumbs to push some stuffing into the muzzle. If you put too much, it will be difficult to pin and keep it pinned. So rather understuff it at the moment. You can always add stuffing later. Then we're going to place it between and below the eyes, but over the purple patches that are around the eyes, just like this. So we almost want the corner, the top corner of each side of the muzzle to just be touching the safety eyes. You want to make sure it's nicely centered. And you use your pins. You can see I'm using my pin to just push the stuffing under the muzzle before I stick the pin in. Now the beauty of pinning is you can always change your mind. You can move a pin up, you can move it down, you can reposition. That's why we always pin first and we look at it from multiple angles before deciding if we've got it right. As you can see here, we're not quite happy with the position. We think it needs a slight twist, which we give it, and then we repin for the second time. Don't feel bad if you have to repin. Rather repin it 5 times and get the right position than only pin once and it's in the wrong position and the whole thing looks off. You can see I'm also putting some pins here at the bottom. And I insert my pins at an angle to keep them in. If you just stick it straight in, it's just going to pop right back out again. And that's what we're looking for from the sides. You can see it's a bit of a downward angle on that muzzle. And that's what we're looking for. Now ready. Our next task is to sew the muzzle in place using invisible stitches. So we're going to put our yarn tail onto our tapestry needle. And then we're going to start working where the yarn tail attaches to the muzzle. Now remember, with invisible stitches, the trick is to make the stitch under the item you're sewing on, not next to it. Just like we did with the eye patches, you now want to make each stitch through the muzzle and under the muzzle. And you want to pull tight after each stitch. I know you can't see very well at this point, it's a bit of an awkward angle. It will become easier to see what I'm doing as we progress. But I'm basically sewing that part of the muzzle that is right by the neck. And I'm working into each of the outer edge stitches of the muzzle. It's also handy to have a small set of pliers nearby in case your needle gets stuck, which it often does with these tricky parts. And the pliers just make it so much easier to pull the needle through. You can see we've now sewn along the bottom edge there. As you can see, I go through the muzzle there. And then I go into the head and through the stitches of the head, but my needle still comes out underneath the muzzle. Into the head, out again. Remove the pins as you get to them and they're in your way. Now we want the muzzle to actually fall over the eye patches, so when you sew, you are going to sew through the eye patches, not just through the head. With the color change, it's more likely for your stitches to be seen, so in this area you need to be particularly careful that your needle always enters and exits under the muzzle and never next to it. It's the only way to ensure a nice, neat finish. I often enter into the same hole that I exited from with my needle. As you can see there, the stitch completely disappears because it is under the muzzle. I'm just going to keep doing this all the way around, working in small, neat stitches that we pull tight each time. I always like to make sure that when I've sewn something on, it stays on forever. It's not coming back off again, which is why I take the time to make these tiny stitches and to really pull tight on each one. Make sure that they remain in place where I want them. Is a little bit trickier when you get to an eye patch because you're working through 2 layers instead of 1, so it can be a bit harder with a blunt tapestry needle to stick it through. It just takes a little bit of patience and you'll get there. Getting close to the end now. We're not going to sew all the way immediately. Going to sew until we get close to the end, but we're going to leave a small opening. And through that small opening that you've got left between where you're currently at and where you started, you can use the back of a crochet hook, or you can use chopsticks or any stick to take some stuffing and push a bit more of it into the hole. You can see I'm using a crochet hook there with the back, opening my hole a bit, pushing in, moving the stuffing that's in there to the further side, and then adding some more. See, this is now where you stuff your muzzle nice and firmly. So this is your last chance to add stuffing and to add shape. You want to get it firm, but you don't want to overstuff. So just keep adding until it feels right. And remember, it's easier this way when you're using smaller pieces of stuffing. The bigger the piece of stuffing, the harder it will be to push it through a small little hole. It does take a little bit of practice, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually quite easy. You can see I also angle the stick that I'm using to push it to the front and not just to the side. There we go, and now that we're happy with the amount of stuffing, we're just going to sew up that last little bit that we were stuffing through. And then I always go a little bit across where I started so that I've got double stitching just to hold it really firmly in place. I don't like it when things come back loose again. Take that personally. Now that I'm happy with the sewing, I'm going to guide my yarn tail to the same position where this first yarn tail from the body is hanging out. That does mean making a couple of stitches to just hide it inside and pull it through. So I'm entering and exiting through the same hole each time. So I want both of these yarn tails to come out at the exact same spot. And this is one of the tricks that keeps your sewed on pieces secure. You want to try and always get two yarn tails coming out of the same spot, doesn't matter which parts they're attached to, and then you want to knot them together like this, nice and firm. You take your scissor and you're just going to snip it off short. You're going to take your crochet hook, flip it over to the back, and you're just going to push that knot into the body, which means you won't be aware of a knot or the yarn ends, but they're knotted together so things are less likely to come loose. And that's what our finished muzzle should look like. Before you go, don't forget to hit that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe to Crochet Republic for more crochet tips, tricks and creative projects. Ring that bell to stay updated on all our upcoming yarn-filled escapades. Thank you for joining us on this crochet journey. You can also find Crochet Republic on Etsy, Facebook and Instagram. Links are in the introduction below the video for easy access. Handmake with love until we meet again in the Crochet Republic. Bye for now.